Peace and blessings, family. It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you today. Today has been a busy day. I had to go to work with the anticipation that there was going to be some snow, of which I had to move. But all in divine order, of which we give thanks. Through the one in whom we live, move, and have our being, I am King, giver and receiver of a deeper wisdom. I honor the divine in you and those who come before us. Because of love, I am here, and I bring the gift of love through the poetry, the reading, and the expressions of love, as is shared with us through Kahlil Gibran, my apologies, the book, The Prophet. My beloved wife is working today, and justifiably so, and I give thanks for that. Today we speak of the reading, as we will enter into the reading, of which we will share with you. And the priestess said, "Speak to us a prayer." With that being said, I'm going to give you the Aramaic version of what is considered the Lord's Prayer, of which is much deeper, of which in your viewing of these videos you would have seen we had actually read a whole book in the interpretation thereof. For prayer is so much deeper than the words we speak, the thoughts that we have, the things that we share with spirit, but is the manifestation of recognizing the unified feel of which we are a part, of which we are not separate, of which we are whole, perfect, and complete, of which we come to understand that the divine lives within us, lives, moves, and has its being through us, and we are an extension of the divine power of the one source that goes by many names. Feel free to make comments on the video as we continue to go forward, for this is truly a discussion of the work of Kahlil Gibran, but a reading as well, of which I will begin after reciting the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic. Abun dibushmaya, nitka dishmak, tete balkutak, nikwe sibiana, aikana dabashmaya, af ba'ar af. Ablan lakma dasun kana yomana, washbuklan kaubena, hakdehen, hagana defganan swakal halben, wela ta lan linsuna. Ila patzan min abisha, mitol talake malkutank, wahela watesh bukta, la alam almin. Amen. Our reading is from page 67. I put my glasses on so I can see it better. Then a priestess said, "Speak to us a prayer." And he answered, saying, "You pray in your distress, and in your need, would that you might pray also in the fullness of your joy and in your days of abundance. For what is prayer but the expansion of yourself into the living ethers? And if it is for your comfort to pour your darkness into space, it is also for your delight to pour forth the dawning of your heart. And if you cannot but weep when your soul summons you to prayer, she should spur you again and yet again, though weeping, until you shall come laughing. When you pray, you rise to meet in the air those who are praying at that very hour, and whom save in prayer you may not meet. Therefore, let your visit to that temple invisible be for naught but ecstasy and sweet communion. For if you should enter the temple for no other purpose than asking, you shall not receive. And if you should enter into it to humble yourself, you shall not be lifted. Or even if you should enter into it to beg for the good of others, you shall not be heard. It is enough that you enter the temple invisible. I cannot teach you how to pray in words. God listens not to your words, save when he himself utters them through your lips. And I cannot teach you the prayer of the seas and the forest and the mountains. But you, who are born of the mountains and the forest and the seas, can find their prayer in your heart. And if you but listen in the stillness of the night, you shall hear them saying in silence, Our God, who art our winged self, it is thy will in us that willeth. It is thy desire in us that desireth. It is thy urge in us that would turn our nights, which are thine, into days which are also thine. We could not ask thee for aught, for thou knowest our needs before they are born in us. Thou art our need, and in giving us more of thyself, thou givest us all. So, you may ask, what is prayer? Prayer is your communicating in two parts, with spirit to spirit as spirit. The words you form in your communicating, number one, the words that come to form by your communicating from the flesh of the soul to the spirit through the spirit. That is two. And then the silences of stillness requiring you the listening that is often performed as meditation, but always performed by hearing what is the saying of the divine to the divinity in you. So, in the poem, The Prophet, He says, you pray in your distress and in your need. Would that you might pray also in the fullness of your joy and in your days of abundance. You see, we have been conditioned to pray when we are in pain, when we are in need, when we are suffering, when we are desperate. But should you not also pray in gratitude when you have received the gifts of God, when you have the joy in your heart of a song, when you have embraced the loved ones that are gifts to you specifically, as you are gifts to them, as we are gifts to one another. You see, prayer is so much more than what the common mind may choose to accept, because prayer is communicating through a relationship with the spirit of life and living and loving. For it continues, for what is prayer but the expansion of yourself into the living ethers? What is prayer but the expansion of yourself into the living ethers? Do you not know that you are body, soul, and spirit? We are energy, and to energy we return when we depart from this, which returns to dust. We are the vibration of life, giving, and living. When you enter into a room, people should feel your presence, should feel your vibration, should feel the essence of the joy that is you, your behavior, your character, your sensibilities, your divinity. This is why it is so important for me to always say namaste because namaste says the divine in me honors the divine in you. For God is love, and love abounds. That is the living ether. That is the unified field. That is what we expand ourselves into, that space of divine prosperity in the breath, in every breath of which we breathe. That is what prayer is, just a portion thereof. Because he continues and says, and if it is for your comfort to pour your darkness into space, it is also for your delight to pour forth the dawning of your heart. You see, when we are in pain and when we are in distress, is that not darkness? Is that not pain? Is that not a suffering that you have, that a need that needs to be filled, a pleading from your heart that something be done supernaturally for your highest and better good? But also, if this is what you are summoned from your spirit to do, then so, yes, do it. But neglect not to also give of your heart when the joy is there, when the love is there, when the abundance is there, when you are feeling elated, when you are feeling blessed. Be a blessing. And then it says, and if you cannot but weep when your soul summons you to prayer, she should spur you again and yet again, though weeping, until you come laughing. Because your prayers are being answered as you speak them. Though your pain may grip you in such a way to where you have no other thing to do but pray. And in the tears of your prayers, let your spirit reach out through love. And love in turn will embrace you and hold you and caress you. And this prayer is the contrite heart, that the Spirit feels the emotion, the energy and movement that will move upon you and give you the comfort that you need and that which you will receive. And in that receiving, you shall come laughing. The allness of being whole, perfect, and complete is the vastness of the unseen God that is seen in all things that is. No matter your thought, separate from living thought, for all is one mind. When you allow it to be so, all is one mind, and it will, if you will allow yourself to be free of resistance that will bound freedom's need to love unconditionally. You see, that energy of resistance and allowing are two strong components that we seldom recognize when we kneel to pray. Although you humble yourself, feel your energy to see if you're tense, to see if you're tight, to see if you're clenching. Because oftentimes when you're feeling like that, you don't feel like praying. But when you are in pain, when you are suffering, when you are in anguish, you are also not relaxed and allowing. The divine requires to give you your highest good. It aspires for that. So in going into prayer, into praying, into the bosom of the divine, release yourself, relax. Allow and do not resist. And feel the unified feel of heaven embrace you and hold you and keep you. It continues and it says, and if you cannot but weep when your soul summons you to prayer, she should spur you again, and yet again though weeping, until you shall come laughing. When you pray, you rise to meet in the air those who are praying at that very hour. You see, we're talking about the unified field. All that is, all energies, all vibrations, all frequencies. Therefore, let your visit to the temple invisible be for naught but ecstasy and sweet communion. So you say, what is communion? Well, oftentimes we understand communion to be the breaking of bread, which is actually often exchanged with the meaning of the Eucharist, which is the Christian ceremony commemorating the Last Supper, in which bread and wine are consecrated, consumed, and symbolically representations of the body and the blood of the Holy Lamb of God, known as the Christ. The Eucharist is the Greek term of well offering or gracious thanksgiving. So, communion, the breaking of bread, is more than a notion. Communion, true communion, is the sharing or exchanging of intimate thoughts and feelings, especially when exchanged on a mental or spiritual level. This, and which I do with you now, is communion. This is the gift of harmonizing and vibrating in one accord with one another, in love, as love, through love. For God is the divine energy that touches us and makes us whole. So it continues, for if you should enter the temple for no other purpose than asking, you shall not receive. You say, what nonsense is this? Well, I say to you, think about it. For if you would enter the temple for no other purpose than asking, you shall not receive. That's not the purpose of prayer. The purpose of prayer is the communication. So you are not a beggar. Think of it as this. You go to your mother's or your father's house, and you enter into their house. You have the key. And you approach them and you say, give me drink. Give me money. Give me food. Who are you? This is, first of all, a sacred place of relating with one another. You don't enter into your parents' house and ask. You say, good evening, good morning. Hello, beloved. You then are welcomed, as you always are. But your salutations is important. For how are you communicating if you are not communing? If you are not communing? If you are not communing? Communication and communing are one and the same. How can you be communicative if it's one way? Again, it says, and if you should enter into it to humble yourself, you will not be lifted. You see, do not come in this place thinking of your selfishness. This is not prayer. Although you use your humbleness as an expression of veneration, it is appreciated. But are you whole when you do this? For each one of these are parts of a doing. Do not come in there less than who you are. Be whole, perfect, and complete when you enter in. For it even says, even if you should enter into it, the temple, to beg for the good of others, you shall not be heard. your agenda is your agenda. Is it not? Of course it is. Is that why you come into the temple? Is that why you went into prayer? For your agenda? You see, the sacredness of prayer is answered in the next line. It is enough that you enter the temple invisible. You see, the unified field is the all in all as all. What am I saying? God already knows your needs before you make the request of your mouth. Excuse me. God already knows your needs because all things are interconnected as one. So when you come, bring your wholeness to remain whole, to be whole, perfect, and complete. You must come into the filling station. The communication of prayer is always key. That's why Scripture says, pray unceasingly. Something you should stay mindful of. For the next few passages goes as follows. Listen carefully and pray for the Spirit of truth to open your understanding. I cannot teach you how to pray in words. Remember what I said earlier. I said, prayer is your communicating in two parts, with spirit to spirit as spirit. The words you form in your communicating, the words that come to form by your communicating from the flesh of the soul to the spirit through the spirit, and the silences of stillness required in listening. Okay? I'll get back to that because it enters into that here as well. I cannot teach you how to pray in words. God listens not to your words save when he himself utters them through your lips. Again, right here, it says, the words that come to form by your communicating from the flesh of the soul to the spirit through the spirit. And I cannot teach you the prayer of the seas and the forest and the mountains, for they too pray, because they too are living things. They are energy, they are vibration. They are a part of the whole as well. He continues and he says, but you who are born of the mountains and the forest and the seas can find their prayers in your heart. And if you but listen in the stillness of the night, you shall hear them saying in silence, our God, who art our winged self, it is thy will in us that willeth. It is thy desire in us that desireth. It is thy urge in us that would turn our nights, which are thine, into days which are thine also. You see, the Lord's Prayer says, hallowed be thy name, thine kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Heaven is the unified field, the energy vibration that has taken the form of all things that are around you. If you but accept that which is the created of the Creator, although manipulated by men and those who are of wicked thoughts and mind, separate from the divine. So here it says, in concluding the poem of Speak to Us a Prayer, we cannot ask thee for aught. That means for nothing. For thou knowest our needs before they are born in us. Thou art our need. And in giving us more of thyself, thou givest us all. You see, the unified field is the God force, which is the source of all that is, was, and has ever been. And it is only we who come to resource. In that love which is given to me, I resource it to give to you. So, remember, prayer is your communicating in two parts with spirit. To spirit as spirit. The words you form in your communicating. The words that come to form by your communicating from the flesh of the soul to the spirit through the spirit. And then the silences of stillness required in listening that is often performed as meditation. Remember, here in the poem, it said, but you who are born of the mountains and the forests and the seas can find their prayers in your heart. And if you but listen in the stillness of your night, of the night, you shall hear them saying in silence, our God, who art our winged self, it is thy will in us that willeth. Meditation is sometimes that which we do to hear what is being said. But always the listening is performed by hearing what is the saying of the divine to the divinity in you. That's why it is so important for you to allow, to relax and release yourself into the temple invisible. And in so doing, you will be embraced by the divine spirit which is in you, who lives in you, who moves in you, that gives you your being. We love you. We appreciate you. We honor the divine in you. And we know wherever you are, God is. We give you love. And as time permits, my beloved will join us again. Arlene Kahet. And Kahet means the purifying light of God. With this, we bid you good night. One love. Okay, I got to find the button that's supposed to make this thing close. There it is. Yeah. And so it is.